Lee,
Right.
you're on.
Well, it's nice to be back again at home. This is like home for me. And I understand that we're going to eventually have an elevator for the program.
Oh, marvelous.
So we're not going to have to always go up that ramp to the floor where the studio is, but that there'll be a real ramp, mechanized ramp that will take us up to the studio.
How many years have you been doing this show?
Oh, gee. I don't know. I have to guess.
15?
15, maybe.
Okay.
And it's sort of been home. How long have you been on it, Ray?
Well, I think this is my third, possibly, I know it's my third show with you. And this topic is a little different. I would say quite different from previous times I've been with you. This time we're really talking about art and creativity, as can sometimes be seen at the Joseph House Community Center, which is in the downtown area of Burlington. They sponsor art classes, and one of the things that they do is rather interesting and different, is they work with the senior people who go to the art classes at Joseph House with young folks at the middle school at down North Avenue, Hunt Middle School. And it's kind of an intergenerational art experience, sometimes at Joseph House and sometimes at Hunt School. And they do all kinds of different types of art. And it basically, I think, raises questions about art and creativity. What is creativity and what is art? These are experiences that, instead of reading books, as I did as an undergraduate in art history, I felt firsthand in working with students from Hunt and seniors at Joseph House. Everybody, in my opinion, is creative, and we are capable of creating art. Now, not all of us are necessarily great artists like Leonardo or Michelangelo, but we are capable of creating things. And the men and women, boys and girls, are capable of creating. And I think the interaction between seniors and younger people was not only an interesting experience for me, and I think everybody involved, but it was also a very rewarding experience for the people who were in this intergenerational art class. There was one thing that I remember vividly. I was an older man who was fighting cancer, and he would off and on visit Joseph House and talk about his art projects that he was doing. And someone said, "But you have cancer, and you're not too sure if you're going to live and if you are going to die and when you are going to die." And the older man looked at the youth who was speaking to him, and he said, "I have cancer, true, but cancer doesn't have me. I live my life to the fullest every day that I can. And when I die, I will die." And it was surprising how the young people from Hunt School were impacted by that kind of a statement. And his art creativity just really had a full-blown impact on the kids. A sense of life, a sense of meaning, a sense of art creativity.
Where was this?
This was, actually the incident took place at Joseph House. I never saw him at Hunt Middle School. As a matter of fact, I had only seen him once. He'd been coming off and on, I guess, for a couple of years. But it was one of those kinds of experiences that was rather remarkable to get the response of the middle school children. One of the things, or I should say another thing that I found quite fascinating was watching how younger children would interact with the older people on doing a similar project, and making letters, or let's design something together, or making patterns, rhythmic. And the thing that struck me was how older people would encourage younger people. Compliments, positive statements of, "Oh, that looks very nice," or "The color in there is very strong, very powerful. What are you trying to get in here?" Just little interactions, I think, were very important, not only for the younger people, but for the older people, because of that interaction there was a statement and recognition of humanity and dignity and respect for what was going on. This encouragement and watching each other. It was kind of interesting for me to watch boys and girls doing their art. Sometimes the boys were shy about being artistic.
Really?
Yeah, isn't that a surprise? Maybe it isn't a surprise.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in one sense, boys are not as encouraged, or young boys are not as encouraged to do art as young girls are.
That's true.
And it's unfortunate that that's the case, because there was one fellow who was on the soccer team, and he really was very artistically inclined and very capable, and he was very shy about showing how talented he was with his art. That kind of reminds me, I taught some classes at Corrections in Waterbury. Totally different kind of situation, but the power of art is something that always amazes me. Art is a very special experience. I would imagine that anyone, any human being can create, not only create, but sometimes express very human desires and human expressions of emotions. And this kind of an expression, I think, for people, say in prison, is very important. Talking about art, their feelings, is something that connects them with other human beings. It's sharing an experience, it's sharing ideas, it's sharing questioning. In a way, this, I think, leads to a question about what is art.
Are you going to answer that?
Oh yeah, I'll give you the $2,000 one, or maybe we don't have enough time to talk about it. A couple of things that always struck me in my studies of art. One was Kenneth Clark.
Oh, yeah.
He did a television series on civilization, and he made a comment about art and civilization, and he sort of implied, well, I can feel what civilization is, but really describing it and say what is civilized and what is not civilized is a very tricky thing. He sees hope or intent, optimism in art as being a very important element. And then I remember Leni Riefenstahl and the reactions of people to her during World War II and after World War II. Probably the film about her, I should say, The Wonderful, Horrible World of Leni Riefenstahl. Leni Riefenstahl was the propaganda artist for Hitler.
Really?
And
I didn't know that.
Pardon?
I didn't know that.
She was a major force in photography of the early middle 20th century, and she filmed German athletes at I think it's the 1938 Olympics that were in Germany, and the sophistication of her art just was obvious. And after the war was over, she was just basically discriminated against by the entire world, and her propaganda films supporting Hitler were basically used as a reason to shun her from art. And that raises a question, I think, because all art can be used as propaganda. For example, religious art. You could say it's expressing in the paintings or sculpture of Michelangelo or Leonardo, are these pictures of propaganda? Are they expressing a narrow view of what is art and what is true religion, or just what is religion, what is religious feeling? The same thing can be said for patriotic art. All the war bonds during World War II. They were major things. I'm sure you remember them.
I do indeed.
Do you want to make any comments about your reaction to
Well, the
some
war
of those?
bonds were a major enthusiastic way to raise money for this country, and to have afford the war and the cost of the war. At least it seemed that way. And if you were patriotic if you bought war bonds. If you didn't buy war bonds, well, then you weren't patriotic.
Unfortunately, I suspect that was probably a common conclusion.
Yeah.
I think you come to another question too about art. What about children's art? You know, I'm sure you know children, perhaps your own children. I know you and your wife are very artistically inclined, and probably some of that rubbed off on your children.
Sure.
Is there something in their art that you find to be common with all kinds of art, or do you think there's something unique or distinctive about it that makes it different?
What would make it different?
The fact that they're youthful, the fact that they're young, they haven't been trained extensively on technique or how to deal with pattern, how to deal with design, how to deal with color.
They haven't been pushed to represent any political scheme. They were just honestly emotional about their world, as I remember.
Okay, I think that would be a very good way of looking at youthful art. I've often been puzzled by Grandma Moses' art. There's a wonderful collection. It's very small, but they're very nice pieces at the Shelburne Museum of Grandma Moses' art. And I've looked at it many times, and I've gone there with my children, and we've all looked at it. And my children's reaction to Grandma Moses' art was, well, gee, I can do as good as she did. And I think that raises kind of a funny kind of question about quality in art. And how to answer that, I think, is sometimes a more academic thing than what was really being what was really the purpose behind the art at Joseph House and Hunt Middle School. Theirs was really, I think, an art to show the interaction between ages and the benefit of interacting with different age groups and just sort of learning how to deal with the fundamentals of art. And in a sense then, I think you could say that a lot of that kind of art was innocent. Now, there happens to be a show of art from Joseph House and from Hunt Middle School at Barnes & Noble during the month of January.
Really?
Yes, it's in the coffee house at Barnes & Noble, and it'll just be there for the month. And it shows, I think, different kinds of interest and styles that different people have created that are connected with Joseph House.
You want to tell our public what Joseph House is, first of all?
I'll be happy to get some of my impressions of Joseph House. It's a community center right at the edge of downtown, and they do an amazing amount of work. I think the Sisters of Mercy basically founded many of the programs that are used at Joseph House. For example, they have reading classes to help people to learn how to read, learn how to get their GED, deal with English as a second language. They have classes in art and literature. So actually the community center is quite active, helping people in a variety of ways. I think the interaction with Hunt Middle School is something just recent, and I like the idea of it. I think the benefits to the community, to the young people and to the older people in the community is significant. It's a miraculous thing to watch someone create and get that sense of pleasure on their face for having done something, and it's appreciated, and they're satisfied, and people appreciate their art. So I think it's done a great deal for people at the community center and Hunt Middle School.
That's intriguing.
Yeah, I think creating art is a very special, almost sacred experience. You're connecting with powers that are internal and sort of certainly beyond you. It's almost magical, and it's fascinating to watch young people and older people go through that process of creating.
I've been interested in production of art, as you might imagine from my background. And my wife is an artist, and she's taught art a lot. And for her, it seems to me to be a way of life. It's not just a way to produce something, but it's more than that.
That's an interesting tack to take, I think. It's a way of life. It's part of being human. It's part of growing and learning and being educated and learning how to respond to the world around you, whether it's people or flowers or trees or meadows or forests or the ocean. It's I think a way of looking and a way of being. It's a commentary, I think, on life itself. Would that make any kind of similarity sense to you and how you and your wife feel about art?
Yeah, definitely. With art, for me, it's a way to express what's inside of you to the public, what you're feeling and what you're seeing, what you're believing in. It's not pushing any party line. It's stressing what is important to you, what you want to express.
What kind of benefits do you think there are to the individual when they do that, when they look inside themselves and express what they're feeling and what they're seeing?
Well, the person becomes much more self-consciously aware of themselves and of their beliefs and their ideas and their actions. It helps them to not just reproduce what they heard from others, but what they believe in themselves.
So it's another form of education, a form of education which would be internal communing with the basic spirit of the individual and encouraging that expression of their unique individual interpretation of life and the world around them and other people.
Say a little bit more there, if you would, about it.
Okay. It would seem as if it's an education for the individual to look at themselves, look within themselves, and extend that outward and express it in different kinds of forms. Painting, photography, sketching, charcoal, watercolor, acrylic, showing what they feel and what they see, how they interpret. It's a different kind of education because it's a more internal examination and a more internal process of reflection. Does that need further expansion, or?
I don't think so. I think it says what it is about.
How do you feel that this kind of education contributes to overall education of humans?
It helps us to be more ourselves.
Would it help bring bread on the table or earn a living?
Good question, Stewart. Not necessarily, but it would nail down what's the important items for any human being, for any human venture.
It would make you question life.
Mm-hmm.
What's really important in life? Are my goals of what I want from my education really being satisfied with taking these following 6 courses? Or is there something else that I should focus upon as well? Would you say that it would fit into a category of a humanizing kind of experience related to music or to theater or literature? Or would it be uniquely different because it's something you create yourself? does it fit into the general humanities, or is it's something so unique because you're dealing with material things, art, oil, photographs, and so on? Or is it just basically another one of the humanities which focuses on life and what people do in life? Would that kind of thing be an appropriate kind of comparison?
I think so.
Okay. I've never taught a writing class or theater class.
You never have.
No,
That's,
I don't have the background for it. But
I can't believe that you don't have the background for it.
well, I've participated in theater, and I've done a little bit of writing, but I've never taught a class in it. I would think that depending on the kind of creativity, writing or theater or dance or art, you would see slightly different kinds of things in life. You would experience things a little bit differently with each one of those things. It might be, you could be painting something from history. I remember when I was in Crete, and I was at the museum, and they're showing sculptures that had been unearthed and were placed in the museum. It was fascinating for me to take pictures of them because their view, the expressions that they had on their faces were totally different than anything I had seen elsewhere.
What way they were different?
While they were often human faces, they were expressive oftentimes of sort of superhuman power. These Kurios sculptures were just, they were not mortals. I don't know if I would call them divine, but they were attempting to get something else across. And I remember just sort of looking at them, and then some of the other figures, some of the mythological creatures that were unearthed as well. And there was something that they were intended to focus upon and draw from the viewer. It was a different kind of experience than you would get if you stopped and you looked at the Madonna and Child, or you looked at a Pietà by Michelangelo, and you tried to get the feeling there. So in a sense, it's a different kind of experience of life dealing with art than dealing with it from a verbal or from a theatrical point of view, or from a musical point of view. I was listening to some Christmas music from the Mediterranean, and I was absolutely amazed at the contrast between the music that was from Europe, medieval France and Italy, and it was sort of an early Gregorian chant, and then they're shifting to Christmas music from the Middle East, who's clearly Middle Eastern music. And if you stop and think about things historically, I mean, Christ grew up in the Middle East. He didn't grow up in Europe. He has a Middle Eastern point of view, a Middle Eastern perspective, a Jewish perspective, but a Middle Eastern one as well, not a European one. And so it's not surprising that the music would be different, and the two things tell you something about life, about culture, about religion, in a way that's different from looking at sculpture or looking at photographs of statues. And yet they're dealing with similar kinds of things, human experiences, human feelings spoken from a different perspective.
That's an intriguing perspective. I find that this chair makes me lie down, so to speak, in the frame of the chair. And it's uncomfortable. And it affects my mentation, what I'm thinking, what I'm believing, what I'm understanding. And I wonder if that's typical for others who are into learning and understanding. Does
I'm sure it is. A friend of mine has some Frank Lloyd Wright chairs. And I remember sitting in them, and I said, "By God, these are the most uncomfortable chairs I've ever sat in my life." And I remember going to shows at the Art Institute in Chicago and the Met and other places, and seeing furniture that was designed for, intentionally designed to give people more comfort. Some of the things would look comfortable, some of the things would not look comfortable, but my experience was some were more comfortable than others. Some of them looked comfortable and weren't. Some of them looked nice and were moderately comfortable. So I think the design has always been somewhat of a conscious element, although I think we look upon what is a chair and we have a thought in mind as to what it is, and don't always pay attention to how do I feel in this chair? Is it really comfortable? Does it put me to sleep? Does it make my back hurt? My legs, my knees hurt?
We're not usually honest enough with ourselves to answer those questions.
Yeah, it's very true. Very true indeed. The asking of questions internally, I think, is a life process.
We're more apt to reflect what we believe that the public likes than what we like.
Yeah. It's sometimes very difficult to be honest and open. It's a scary experience to really say, I don't like this. Or I find this art to be boring.
Or crummy.
Or a very bad piece of art. I don't care if he's Picasso or someone else. I think this is one of the things education doesn't always aim for. Internal
honesty.
Internal honesty, internal reflection.
I think that's a fascinating subject. Internal reflection, internal honesty. I think you're right. I think we don't consider that. We're more apt to reflect what we think you're supposed to believe, what we think you're supposed to understand.
I think that's one of the reasons that art is so important. It's not a guarantee that you're going to be a great artist if you really show what it is you think, what you really feel. But it is an experience of internal self-examination, which is beneficial to anyone. And art is just one vehicle to accomplish this kind of internal reflection. Some of the class discussions that we had went that way. What do you think of this? It's always important to have some kind of critique. And one of the very difficult things in an art critique is being honest. You don't want to hurt somebody's feelings, or you want to encourage them in a way, or it was a nice job, but don't consider making a living doing this.
True.
It's very difficult to share openly and genuinely your impressions of this nature.
I never thought about how difficult it is to be honest about what one likes and what one doesn't like. But I guess it's really important.
I think it's important not for the other person or other people, but I think it's most important for yourself to try and be as honest and genuine as you possibly can about your life and your experiences with life and with other people. I don't know if that'll always get you a contract, $1 million, or produce the next great American novel, but in a inward reflecting point of view, maybe it reminds me of the statement by Michael Wood, who was quoting an American author, Mark Twain, and he said, Indians, not North American Indians, but Indians from the subcontinent, while they may physically appear as paupers, in matters of the spirit, it is they who are the millionaires and we who are the paupers. Yes, I think it's rather an interesting thing that Mark Twain would make such a comment.
He said that.
Yeah. I don't know what book Michael Wood was quoting from, but it's an interesting quote. And it certainly is an interesting comment about American or Western culture, particularly in interacting with another culture who oftentimes has very different attitudes about what's valuable and what's important in life. Also, the fact that it's a non-Christian culture as well. We've touched on many things, and we probably could spend quite a few more hours, but do you feel that we've satisfactorily covered the topics at hand?
Only to begin with. Only to begin with.
Maybe I should remind people that an art show at Barnes & Noble Coffee House will be found with photographs and drawings, acrylics, watercolors from people from Joseph House and from Hunt Middle School through the month of January.
Would Joseph House reflect what is popular for people? Or would it be a prejudicial reflection?
I think it would be a rather interesting examination because there's so many different points of view being expressed.
Because Joseph House makes it's sort of a point of view that it's not necessarily universal.
Well, I think that the point of view of the art from the people at Joseph House is uniquely expressive of the artists themselves, and in one sense has absolutely nothing to do with Joseph House itself or a philosophy of Joseph House, except that they produce and make art, and art is encouraged at Joseph House.
So how, for me, Joseph House is a very formal name, a very distinct entity. And I don't know whether there's anything to say about what's a valuable piece of work or not.
Well, I think they were encouraging people from the community who came to the art classes to be as creative and as self-expressive as possible about the work that they were doing. So it was not trying to encourage a specific point of view other than do what you can, express what you wish. Use this time and the material to create in visual form ideas, thoughts, reflections, what you might think is beauty. The children's art from Hunt School, it was obvious that they were taking art classes in addition. And this picture shows a great deal of use of pattern. Here's another picture that plays around with color, and it's obvious that it's intentional on the part of the students and probably the teacher who was instructing the class. Here are the basic elements and components of art. Learn how to use them so that when you do something, you can do it with a degree of finesse and ability. So in that sense, there is a distinct difference between the Joseph House pictures and the Hunt School pictures.
That's an intriguing subject.
Yes, I think it is. I think it's one of the things that I found fascinating with the time that I spent there, which is a little over a year and a half.
That's quite a while.
Yeah, yeah. Got to see many things, work, different ideas in mind. It was interesting with the 400 year celebration of Lake Champlain. And some things were done there specifically to support and honor that taking place. So there was a variety of experiences and things that were created during that time period.
Hmm. How about Native Americans, their interest in art? What, if anything, can you say about Native American art?
Well, I found some of the, what do you call it, dream catchers. I don't know if I can describe completely accurately what a dream catcher is.
I know what you mean.
It's kind of a, if you took a tennis racket, only you could make it out of a small piece of birch branch, and you tied, like in a cobweb fashion, a pattern there to hold the whole thing together, and you could put feathers on it or paint it different colors or make it out of different materials. I found it rather fascinating to see, and then some blankets are really quite lovely and are definitely spiritual and religious, and then contain a different way of looking at the world, a very different kind of way of looking at the world. Music, the same thing. Drumming would be a very different way of looking at the world. And yet the whole thing is an experience of saying all cultures attempt to deal with the unknown or answer questions about life, which are basic questions of life, no matter where you're from. And you can see Native American art in, well, some of the best places to see that are in Washington, D.C. A few museums scattered around upstate New York and parts of New England. I think Dartmouth has a collection of Native American artifacts. And there's some here at the museum at UVM. But I'm not really familiar with techniques of creation or symbolism of images or what they meant. So my knowledge of Native American art's rather limited. Do you have any other thoughts, Lee, that you would like to have us probe here and explore during our time?
I think I might to be honest whether you like something or don't like something. Not just reflecting what is the current attitude or the current political schema, but what you like or that you don't like. I think that's kind of hard to do.
Can you give me any examples of what you're referring to?
Well,
I'm not sure if this is one of the things you might be thinking of or if it would apply. I remember going to the Andy Warhol Museum in Pittsburgh and I was just totally fascinated with the variety of things that he produced. And it's always struck me as fascinating to hear the shifts in variety of points of view towards Andy Warhol, his life and his work. I think he was a lot more creative and talented than a lot of people gave him credit for. And he might have been very eccentric in some of the things he did and so on, but I see a lot of talent in what he did, and I rather enjoy his work. Would that be sort of in the line of what you were thinking of being honest? Because I know at times people loved Andy Warhol, and then later on, a lot of people thought he was terrible. And I think there's a growth of people who really find his work quite exceptional and positive. And I'm just expressing my point of view of what I see and how I react to his work.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think it's looking at many pieces of work by an artist that you really get the feeling of what it is that they're doing. Just looking at one piece or two pieces or just a couple is not sufficient to give you a full understanding of what it is they're doing. I think in some senses you can see that rather clearly at this art show at the cafe in Barnes & Noble. There are some landscape images, homescape, townscape images that are rather unique. There's some images of a variety of things that are fascinating among the children's art, and then there's some fascinating photographs of people in various plights or distress that are interesting.
There must be a huge influence on people to back what is considered valuable art rather than what they like.
I think so. I think so. I think it's very nice that places like Barnes & Noble and many of the places, Mirabelle's, a fine place to get breakfast, lunch, or snacks.
The airport in Montreal.
They sponsor art, and I think it's very nice that the community does that, because it gives people an idea of the artistic productions and creativity that exists in this area. There certainly is a variety. I would say there'd probably be, you could say there's also a wide range of quality, but it's just fun looking at what is produced and seeing that expression of things. Can you think of anything else that we should spend a few moments mulling over?
Five minutes.
Five minutes went very quickly.
Very quickly. Oh boy, we're in a hot spot now. I've never thought of art as investment.
Oh, really?
Although I know it's not an uncommon point of view, but I think it would be very difficult to come up with any guidelines as to what would you say would be important to take into account to invest your money in the field of art. Have you ever thought about that?
Not really. I like the thought. that the idea of an investment, that your art that you own is an investment. I don't think of that as coming to mind, but it is. I'm feeling I would like a lot more time to talk about these things. We've just begun to explore the area.
I think that's quite true. There's so much that can be said about art, creativity. We've really just begun to talk about certain things, all of which could be expanded.
And I'm particularly interested in the thought that my wife is an artist, and we don't usually think about her work as an art form, but it is. I guess our time is up.
I think so.
Well, thank you very much for coming on the program today.
It's been my pleasure. Very enjoyable.
We can do more.